Good morning again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our user group session on CIO dashboards and mobile alerts. Today, we gave Chris the day off, and Justin Burichter, our technical manager, is joining us leading the session. As always, there's two parts. Justin will do his presentation on dashboards and mobile alerts, and then after the presentation, we'll open up the floor for questions and discussion.
Thanks, Andrea. Hopefully I can live up to the mighty shoes that Chris leaves behind with all you guys. It's been a while since I've done this. So what we're going to talk about during this session is we've had a few questions with it, allocating specific data to dashboards for CIO usage, just some best tips around that and some practices around it. I asked the first session this morning if anyone would be willing to share ideas of their C-level dashboards that they've come up with on our forum. We're always looking for people to do swap, mix and match. I'm going to give you some suggestions around here, but I'm definitely going to focus on how to keep those dashboards greener, more than red. And then as a little bit of a sweet ending, because if you guys have ever followed the user group sessions I do, I tend to leave you guys with a little bit of a keynote of what's coming on the next version. You'll get to have a look at the mobile feature that we're releasing for live maps, which is in line with the mobile feature we're releasing for the unlimited customers on IQ as well. So that's a little bit of a sneak peek. Plus I have a quick look underneath the hood at 10.4 for live maps. So just to get started, let's focus on the CIO dashboards. What I'd like to start here is start the other way around, because a lot of you probably work with SCOM, which means that you are very used to the computer class centric design within SCOM. I'm here to say for your C-level dashboards, do not use that class. It doesn't make a very great impression on management. I know that it's the way that SCOM works. And what I mean by the C-level centrics, this is where I'll jump into a live breathing environment from us, is when you look at SCOM, a lot of the customers I work with when they get started love this dashboard straight away. A lot of the engineers of SCOM love it because it just simplifies the data and information in SCOM in a way that you can understand it, which is the computer class. But unfortunately, computer classes are driven with lots of child, roll-up, rules, monitors, health classes that can basically turn your computer red all the time, which means that when you come to show managers, C-level people, or even application owners, if you show a dashboard with computers, you're going to get a lot of feedback. You may have had this in the past, where, wow, that's red, and it doesn't make sense to be red because it's not impacting the application that this supports. Just a good example here, this is Link at the moment. From an infrastructure point of view, if I look through our automated dashboard, down here we have the operating system and the disks. They are both showing green. There's absolutely no impact from an infrastructure point of view, and the network device is available as well for me to get worried and frustrated on this. However, if I was to put a Skype for Business distributed application together using the SCOM model with the computer first, I would end up with a red Link, red Skype for Business box. It's not what I want to show the management, and it's definitely not the conversation I want to have where I walk in and say, hey, here's your Skype for Business service, here's its availability, right now it's red, but red doesn't actually mean red. Red just means there's a problem at the application level that someone has to go and fix. We've done a whole bunch of user group sessions at the beginning, so the first user group and the second user group were about how to make service maps. In the service maps, one of the higher features that we focus on is taking the end user experience of services and making them very visible, something that the computer-centric system within SCOM doesn't actually do. So what you can't see on the computer is a physical end user test, because it should never be on its standard computer. So when you come to design C-level dashboards, a lot of people make the mistake of putting all the computers into a group, putting it on a DA, and then having a dashboard within live maps, potentially a custom dashboard or a heat map with those objects in there, and then dropping me an email or Chris an email saying, hey guys, my manager's not really happy because it's red all the time. Can you help out with that? So I'm here to say, break your thought process down. It's not about the computers, even though I know that's the way you work with it in SCOM. That's the way the alerts generate. They generate against an object that affects a computer, so you know where to look when you have to dive into SCOM. They've built that centricness. For us, it's about the actual components in the application and the business service. And for the C-level and management, it tends to be, are they running to a good enough level for me to say that Link is running? So already here back on the service dashboard, and again, I'm not going to focus too much on this because we've done some sessions on that. Feel free to watch those user groups. They're available still. But on here, you can see immediately Link 2013 is already showing that end user is working, and that's the same for Exchange for me right now. And that's what I want to show the management. Now, once you've got the service map, a lot of people have come to us and said, well, I just want to show that end user column. So I'm going to show you some tricks of how to separate out those objects so that you're only showing them instead of reflecting just this dashboard, because you'll notice that this dashboard is driven to help you become proactive. And that's usually when we talk to C-level management, it's about being able to make sure that their team is proactive on the dashboard. That touches on one of the other points I have to make here is try not to put too much detail into it. Proactive doesn't necessarily mean your C-level has to be swamped with performance counters or forecasting on disk space, all that stuff. I know that's really interesting for specific people, the infrastructure team and potentially application owners who have to keep the application running over a period of time. That will make sense to them, but keep it simple. Get C-level just to understand that right now monitoring is telling us that it's working. So you'll start noticing in our extension of Live Maps, the IQ solution, there's a lot of focus on dashboards becoming very simple again, because the higher up you go in the tree of information, the harder it is to keep that simplified as you start grouping up multiple tools. And SCOM is a big culprit of this. It can give you a lot of information. A lot of people are focusing on trying to make that information simpler, yet still use all of that information. I see it when a lot of new potential users that I connect to and do their proof of concepts, when we first connect with them and they've played around with the product for a while, they tend to start showing me dashboards that look a lot like this, which is, computers, alert lists, percentage, memory use, disk space, performance graphs, stuff that's really hard to put out of SCOM, really easy in our product. That's the danger. This dashboard looks really cool, flashy, doesn't really serve a purpose with the management because they won't understand half of this unless they're very technical. Now, I'm not saying your management's not technical, but I am saying the higher up we go in the branches, the less important this becomes and the more important it is to actually be able to say, hey, your service is being delivered. And keep in mind, one of the roles and functions within infrastructure teams is to make sure that that delivery is around the clock. SLAs is a dirty word. When you start talking business applications, it becomes less dirty. Think on SQL clusters, on web page farms, on failovers, high availability. These are all scenarios that you guys are working with today to make sure delivery of your application is not impacted. Now, when you go into SCOM information, it doesn't understand a lot of that. So a lot of people tend to try and create that non-logical scenario with their monitoring data. What I mean by that is if you've got a cluster of SQL components, you put in the SCOM SQL management pack, the cluster management pack, then you try and grab the cluster and put it on a dashboard. You get really frustrated because the cluster is red all the time. So you try and put the SQL component on the dashboard, and then you have two or three of them, and one of them is in red, and the dashboard's red that you show management because you're showing that group to them or to the application owners. Then you start reaching into rules and monitors and trying to hit overrides. And I'm sure you guys have all been down that road. Effectively, if you're using Live Maps correctly, you don't do overrides. That's what the service map here is all about, is the more overrides you place on your data, the less chance you have of seeing a problem before it becomes a problem. I'm meaning overrides against target components. I'm not meaning overrides against rules and monitors you guys don't care about. That's a different story. I'm definitely willing to have a cup of tea and a chocolate with anyone who wants to have that conversation with me at another time. But essentially, building clusters, groups, and overriding the rules and monitors so that you can create a dashboard that is always green sort of blocks the idea of why management wants to see that dashboard. They just want to know that you're in control and that the service is delivered. However, someone in the technical department does need to know that there are problems in the cluster level before the entire cluster fails. The worst scenario I've heard from a customer in the past is I have my web farm, like we have down here in Order Entry, simple.NET application. You guys are probably familiar with it if you've been on any of my demos or my webinars, where we have a web farm and websites together. And these websites are farmed out. So it literally means if one fails, the others will cover the workflow on the load balance. If all three fail, then I have a huge problem. So what I don't want to do is hit an override against this group to say the worst case has to be 70% or 90% before this turns red. I actually want this to go red immediately when there's a problem, because that means that someone from the application team or from the infrastructure team can go and check on which component is down. If I was to set it to be worst case, which means if all three are red, then it is red. By the time that turns red, everything else in my application will probably kick into red because it won't work anymore. And that's a really bad scenario to be in. Just now I'm going to show you another dashboard that comes out with the IQ components that also allows you to start spotting problems before they become monitoring problems even. It's when we start reaching out to ITSM platforms. Again, Drill down blocks, work on these. A lot of people like trying to show the information to C-level in one dashboard, right? So here's everything he's asked for on a single screen. I've had lots of requests from people say, hey, can you make the dashboard even bigger so I can put more data on there? I would recommend breaking it down into easy to manage chunks, sections and scenarios, locations, business entities, whatever you guys have at that area. The powerfulness of a dashboard in real time is that if it changes color, people see it. I have literally seen people put really small icons on a really large screen and then complain that they haven't been told that it's changed color because you literally can't see it at, a meter away from the TV screen. You need your mobile or you need the alerts to pump to your mailbox to tell you that the dashboard's changed. If that's the case, then, that's not a powerful dashboard. Keep it simpler. And again, fancy dashboards will be the death of you. Too complex dashboards make it really hard to understand. So just to give you some ideas here, the ones I've listed from my environment, just a very simple, clean overview to people. Top left is a common one that you'll see in Live Maps, and I use the scenario a lot. So customer web is my order entry service, and email is actually a roll-up of 3 services. Now, if you've paid attention with me flicking through the screens, you'll notice that email on my other system is red right now on the service overview, but the end user experiences are green. The tests I'm running to make sure that email is usable within the company are green. The right-hand side one is the new feature that comes with the IQ layering. That can just sit on top of SCOM. There's another way to show a very simple overview of what the availability is of a group set of information. Very simple if you've got the end user experiences in there. It is also very easy to combine with systems that provide a better experience at end user. Dynatrace, Splunk, Service Trace, or the APM system will give you a better view of how the application is performing from a customer point of view, something that SCOM can struggle with. But it does make your dashboard more reflect the reality of what's going on in the environment. And the more that reflects the reality, the faster you can action on them. I'm going to show you now how to separate some of those out. Again, stop me if you guys have any questions. So I'm going to make a couple of assumptions that you guys have worked through our user groups, know the service mapping component, have fully automated the services, and have ended up with this sort of overview. Now, I get a lot of questions about how to fill up the end user component. I think I touched it on another session, but I'm just going to quickly highlight it here. Within SCOM, if you're only using Operations Manager, you're going to be reaching into the monitoring wizard side under authoring. And in particular, if you haven't tried it yet, you're going to be looking at web application availability for the majority of it. However, we did release through one of our engineers on GitHub. He had this project running for a while. He's finally got it to a stage where it is usable. A lot of people are enjoying it. So he's released it under our new company name. So you'll see it in there. There's some monitoring DB query results powered by Martello. It's a free management pack. If you haven't got it, go and download it from the systems right now for me. It's basically going to allow you to test out queries against your databases, and that's SQL, MySQL, Oracle, any of the database systems. So your application owners could have a test that they run to make sure the application runs performance-wise or just is available or works. You can duplicate that test and create a monitor of it in SCOM and get SCOM to retest it and tell you if that fails. So essentially what that management pack does, gives you access to new abilities to test end user experiences, in particular for services that don't have a web URL front end or backup IT services or components that just rely you to get data out of a database. If you haven't switched on a lot of these, feel free to reach out to us. We can do sessions with you to work with these. They're very simple templates. Once you've got them up and running, you'll be able to populate your end user components in the services. Then the next is to reach out and create a C-level dashboard or a management level dashboard. Now we have built a wizard in here to create what we call an overview dashboard. You'll see the scenarios simply in there. It's a very basic wizard. It just expands on what the diagram ability does in the back end of Live Maps. You'll notice I'm using the back end of Live Maps. I will show you how to create a C-level dashboard in the front end. But the back end gives me the most flexibility. I can change the names and do groupings of information that I want. This wizard will basically talk you through a couple of tile scenario and then say, what do you want us to add from each service? I would not recommend picking the full service because then you will end up in a scenario which I'll show you very shortly. But if you come into the filter and type end user, you will grab any of the end user components from any of the applications you want. And again, keep in mind, make them blocks. So don't grab Office 365 Exchange 2010, 2013 as an example if you want that block to end up as email. Much rather let the wizard flow out or use create a diagram and create it from scratch yourself. If you do that, you'll end up with something like this, which is just simple boxes. I can add more boxes to it. Use a very nifty skill that I showed in another scenario, which is just being able to get these to match size. There we go. And then this is the reason why I'd say not pick your services. So if you go to the services part and then grab exchange, I'll just grab the 2010 one because it's at the top, place it in there, then you'll end up with the scenario that you don't want, which is it's red all the time. Because essentially what I'm doing there is grabbing the full top of the tree of the service map, which means anything in that service map, mailboxes, whatever, filling up, turns red. In reality, what you want to do is just show the management delivery. And that's when your end user component will start coming into play. So if I go into here, end user, or even better, let's grab exchange end user components, and place that in there, you'll see, without doing anything magical, I change a box from red to green, and then I can actually come in here and change the label to match what the business understands it. So that could be email on-prem, for example, or just email service, or whatever you guys know it as. I've got all of my email services rolled up underneath a subgroup here. Again, refer to, I think it's the second or third user group that we talk about how to use the console to create amazing dashboards. That would then particularly allow me to group up end user components to represent multiple services, the business service versus the IT services underneath. Essentially here then I've grouped the end user components and I've started ignoring all the infrastructure parts, which makes your business service overview really important to make visible at the same time for the technical team, because this will only tell you a problem when the customer has a problem, exactly what management's asking for, what your SLAs are probably going to be targeted against, and what they need to visibly see. That's it in the back end. Place and maneuver how you want. Put logos and icons on there how you want. Keep it very simple. You'll notice I've used a diagram map as well, because we try and get management involved, and a lot of people like to see their data centers on there. Tip of advice, don't give a full data center map with logical devices. Again, you're going to run into the scenario where you'll have lots of these components and they will turn red all the time at the computer level. I'd leave it in my demo environment because it's very good to understand the logical process, but in reality, if you guys have built this, you're going to have lots of reds all the time. The common scenario we're facing in proof of concepts we're trying now is that people see this data center and then they have their network device in here as well. Potentially this is not on a SCOM scenario. If you guys know, SCOM's not very good at network devices. Actually, SCOM supports the scenario a lot easier than most other devices, but the scenario is that if the network device or the gateway device dies, all of the other systems underneath, they're technically not dead, they're still running, they're just not reporting to the monitoring tool. So that is a flow of alerts that could pump out of the system. Now, SCOM and Live Maps, if you create the dashboard that way and you actually put the computers on here, you can set the whole data center to inform you on an alert, which says, hey, data center's down, which is good enough for management as well. If that network device ping goes down, all the computers actually don't go red, they go into a gray state and they don't generate alerts against the board or against the dashboard or against the group. So you'll still only get the, hey, the network device is down notification. Very good for troubleshooting because you know where to look. Also very good for your SLA against the group because the computers technically haven't switched into red because SCOM doesn't know about that. However, from a SCOM point of view, a lot of SCOM admins complain that they're going to get a lot of agent watches suddenly complaining because they can't pull the data. Rah-rah, agent watches are not what you should show the boss. That is something that the admin of SCOM should be aware of, that that data center cannot report. There won't be anything you can do until you can fix that network device. To solve that scenario for management, I would recommend something else more along the lines of this, where you can do sub-creative dashboards, and I leave it up to you, but again, my advice is just use the end user components for those localizations for their services. So you get a dashboard that shows services underneath. Really up to you on how you want to represent that, but end user components would require you to actually start setting up localizations for end user tests for the applications from there, which is great because that means you can set up new rules and monitors in SCOM and start delivering true SLA measurements per location, per service. And that's eventually where some of your SLAs are going to go. You'll notice that if you use the service map, a lot of people want the service map broken out per location, per service, per customer if you're an MSP, for example. That's the back-end part that gives you the maximum control in the dashboards, as you can see, changing naming conventions. Back in the front end, you can reuse that custom dashboard. So here it is, and then start adding other data like the SLOs or the SLAs that are actually being tracked against potentially just the end user component. And remember, in version 10, we've started giving you the ability, or 10.3 even, started giving you the ability to show all of the SLAs and be able to layer out just the components you want. So you could even give people that are really interested into what's caused the end downtime a way to see the graph that shows that, or a way to see it over a month time frame or a percentage time frame, be able to export that data as well. Talking about export, if you haven't got hold of the free management pack on reporting side from us, now's the time to do it, because you could run that report against the group of all the end user components and find out which end user component out of that group is being down the most. And if you target the service, you can find out what's caused the downtime. So this really enables you to have conversations with the management about how to fix that and forecast it. So that's not important to have on the real-time dashboard, because that's all about guaranteeing that they know it's running, but it is important on the next conversations that you have, where you start showing them you're hitting 100%, but you do have to fix things in order to hit that, and they want to be aware of that as well. That's a few examples. Hopefully you guys are getting some ideas out of this. If you want to do it another way, in here I've just used the custom dashboard widget to pull out the C-level dashboard. It's sitting down in here, custom dashboards. However, you could do roughly the same once you've done the grouping with health state widgets. If you want to automate this a bit better, the health state widget will allow you to target a group. If you've got the C-level dashboard already set up, let me just grab that. C-level dashboard, and let me clear out the class. This is where you'll be able to see just the end user components. Now, because I've got my data center on there, there's a couple of other groups showing up. So potentially I want to just label that down to the live maps groups themselves, so that I only get the non-individual objects, the group levels. So that'll be my locations, my data center, and the end user experience. And already you can start seeing that's labeled out. That means that you can get just a box with end user experiences in there. And we also provide you with a perspective class. This was the trick. You had to pick a live maps group. So I'll put that back in. So it's a live maps group we're looking for, and then target under the selector group, because we create a fictitious group in the system anyway, where you just grab all live maps end user perspectives, and you'll see that that labels out all of the end user perspectives in your system. So a very simple way just to find out which services are actually down. Now, the drawback is in a heat map widget, you cannot change the tags that are on the systems, and those are predefined by our service maps. So that's something that is only really useful if you guys want to have and understand what end user means, want to have that shown and displayed. But the good news is this can be fully automated versus the slow back-end manual drag and drop of it, where you actually get a lot more control over the naming convention. That scenario of end user components has been driven into Service IQ as well. So Service IQ not only will import the service overviews that you've done within SCOM now in the latest version, so we have that import button, and you get a list of all the service maps in there, pulling in the end user parts, but you can also create a dashboard just based on the end user groups as well. And that is that last dashboard I showed in the presentations, where you get the ability to show management different components. So let me just reset this back from the demo I did. So here we have a very simple heat map, which shows you how red is. Now you can actually block it at this level that management cannot drill down. However, you could give them a very simple overview. So you'll notice there's a CIO dashboard in here, which matches all the services. That is all the end user components in the system, which I can actually drill into and show you the members so you can physically see what it is. You can drill down into here and start going in and testing the service out against SCOM. One of the big wins that we've got with this is that you can also do information around the service as a whole for management. So you can show them alerts. So where are the hot spots in my environment if we start doing these boards by business services again. So you can see the end user components, there's only real 3 problems at the moment. However, services and data centers have a lot more. Mean time to resolution against it, plus incidences. So you may have noticed, let me just duplicate that and show it to you again. You may have noticed on the services overview, not only do we do end user, application, infrastructure, and the supplier services that Live Maps is so popular on, but we also can show you hotspots from a alert overview point of view. So My monitoring tools are telling me this, for example, is a really big problem right now, this service, or anything with large numbers here. Anything that has a disproportional number of incidences against it would catch my attention immediately as management. So I'd say this one is probably something that we're aware of or something that's rapidly growing for monitoring, so we're proactively ahead of it. Customers are not aligned to it yet, whereas VoIP networks is probably the other way around. Monitoring is telling me I have problems, not a lot, but they have major impact from that service because there's lots of incidences at my ticket system. So potentially I want to drive in and find out the numbers and what those incidences are. Are they change management requests or are they physical problems? And of course, the uptime, which is the availability in the last 7 days. Now, that's very simple overview. We get a lot of requests here. Can you do some reporting on that? That's possible. That's where we'll either reach out to you with Kibana or advise you to wait for our modeling that's coming across from Live Maps later this year. So you can do those reports on this one. But from a real-time health state, these are really efficient ways to share with management the simplicity of it. Talking about sharing, as you guys probably know from other sessions, once you've got your C-level dashboard, we've introduced it now in 10.4 that you can do shareable links for all of the dashboard types within the system. So if you're doing it just from the pure Live Maps point of view, integration, you're going to be stuck with the Live Map security, or the SCOM security model, which means you'll need a account, service level account, which you can load into Live Maps now, and then create a shareable link. Big recommendation for C-level is disable the drill down. They don't need to go and see what the problem is generally, unless they're very technical. That creates a shareable link, and Live Maps will go in and allocate all of the data correctly to allow people to see these dashboards. However, we have an entire user group webinar on security. Feel free to check that out. Chris did an amazing job of showing you how you can even further lock these down. IQ gets a lot simpler because we're sitting outside of SCOM. That makes life a lot easier. Head into settings, roles. You'll probably create a C-level role on there. And I'll just grab this one randomly. And within there, you can add any user or group from AD. So you don't need their accounts details. You can just add them. And once they're allocated, then you can control which boards they get to see, and if they should be able to drill down and search for different components or see the business service maps. And that can be read-only. Highly recommend that for management, so they can't go and change anything, but they can at least get visibility on the board and see that straight away. That's on the sharing part. I think that covers most of it. I'm just going to check if there are any questions at the moment while I catch up on this here. Andrea, you can hear me, supposedly?
I can hear you, Justin.
Do you have a question for me, just to make certain?
What version of IQ are you demoing today?
That's 2.6.1.
Okay, which is the latest version on our website.
Yep. So this is the one that they'll get in there. There's actually not a lot of feature adds in 2.6.1 because it's a minor release, but it does introduce a couple of new integrations that are available, of course, and it does have a lot of stability fixes in there, as we're working with a couple of customers to make sure that it gets balanced out correctly. So I think for existing customers that have got it up and running, you will notice that there's Azure Insights, there it is, running in here. That's been added and had a few updates on a couple of the integrations. I know the SCOM one's got some major updates as well. Back to the slide. So I did talk about how to make sure that your dashboards are less red. Don't put too much data on it. If you are putting a lot of data, try and work in layers. That makes life a lot easier for them. Also, here's some questions to run in your head. Now, I do this out of experience. I end up talking with our installers the first time round. Usually what I do is I try and encourage the application owners to get involved in the conversation, because I see a lot of people that run monitoring do struggle with one major thing, and that's, besides the monitoring platform keeping them busy 24 hours a day, and they have a job next to that, it's also understanding the data that needs to be shared. Now, in reality, monitoring people should know what data their monitoring tool gets, but will always struggle with knowing what will help the application user or the help desk user or C-level people understand the data. So what I'd recommend is, here's some questions to have in your head or have conversations internally. You will see a lot of administrations, and if you guys get me involved on health checks or anything like that, this is what I encourage, is to get the application owner on there, because you'll find that you'll spend more time creating a dashboard with all the possibilities than actually a dashboard that's useful for the user in the end. Because I've seen it so many times. A SCOM guy gets Live Maps on there, does a really amazing, powerful performance dashboard, really struggles to get a very specific performance counter. But when we actually show the end user, hey, look, here's your service, it's green all right now. If you drill down, you get to see all the performance counters. Is that good enough? And they say, yeah. I've had grown men cry on the phone call, and that's what I focus on. Just make it simple. So here's some questions. What's the business service essentially? What is it made up of? You'll find if you watch my automation on business service mapping, it tends to just be computer groups. When you get IQ in there, then it tends to be added components as well. Keep it simple. I know people try and make their monitoring platform data really complex. When it comes to service maps, the simpler it gets, the easier it gets to fix the problem faster. Who's the dashboard meant for? Again, red, green, amber boxes are work very well for upper management. Large, complex dashboards work very well for technically minded people. And help desk just wants to make sure that someone is aware of a problem and is fixing it. Those styles of dashboards are very useful for people. To-do list, alert lists, very good for people who have to work with that. Not very good for reporting or making sure the problems have gone away. How do I make the dashboard show proactive data? Now, that's something that people struggle with a lot. My advice is don't do overrides and talk to your application owner. What does he need to know about before it becomes a problem for the user? What you want to do, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, is I ask them, how do you measure your service delivery today? And you'll laugh, but I get scared when people say, well, we measure the numbers of tickets that hit the help desk on problems on the service. And the reason why I get worried about that is that's actually an indication of how much you failed at delivering the service, not proactively keeping the service in the air. So set dashboards that will give you data to be able to be proactive, and for management as well. End user experience is very important, but maybe you also want to think about key components that management needs to know about, like Active Directory has to run. That's it on the C-level stuff. I'm going to now look at the second part, which was the mobile features. So I dragged this up. If anyone can spot the blog article that was based on, you get the Booby Prize. I'll send you a nice box of chocolates from Holland. This is an old image that just essentially explains what goes on with our mobile feature for live maps. We are changing that on the 10.4 release, which is top of my head. If we get the clearance today from development, probably going to be end of May. The reason why we're doing it, this is essentially how this works for all of the platforms at the moment. So iPhone, Android, or Windows Phone. You have two parts of it. You have the Live Maps HTML5 web console. So excuse me for the wrong logo there, but it's an old image that talks to the mobile phone, allows users to sign in and start selecting what they want to see. And of course, they can use the HTML5 front end on the phone to deal with problems. But essentially, there's a Windows service that communicates with a third party that generates notifications to go out to your phone. Now, that's the setup. If you want to know how to set that up, there are installation guides that will tell you all the ports and everything to run it. You will still need to have that set up for iPhone and Windows. However, for the Android phone, we're aligning with the Android messaging service that's coming out that is available for us. That's moving us away from the third party. So in 10.4, you will not need to have the notifier system running in there, and your data does not go to a third party. So that essentially means the mobile phone will connect directly to the web console and allow the notifications to be pushed through there. Now, I've stolen some screenshots from development. Don't tell anyone. You can have a quick glimpse of what it looks like. This is the new web front end for the mobile phone. It looks and functions exactly like the web page will do on 10.4. This is what it looks like when you get an alert list in there. You actually physically can see the alerts, click on them, and hopefully either in the first release or the second release plan for this, we will be able to function on them. There is a second release plan on this because all of the features that are sitting in here are also going to be ported for the IQ coverage. I had that question earlier this morning. So what I'm showing you now is the Live Maps Android side. However, once that's released, the development team does get free up to go and complete the process for IQ, which essentially means that we can push notifications from IQ, which could see you not having to use the Live Maps stuff in the far future with that. But for Live Maps users of the mobile phone, here's the update that you've been waiting for. You can see the alerts and you can see the services and the dashboards that you subscribe to. And yes, physically in the app, you'll be able to see the services. So you don't have to jump across from app to browser at all. You're literally logging to the live web page and being able to click through them. And that's all I can show you on the mobile side. So I did want to actually show you one other part on the back end of the mobile side. So let me make sure I get to the right Live Maps here. I'm actually able to spot the new 10.4 for one particular reason, not just because it says 10.4 down here, but because one of the changes that we're applying to it is moving the administration abilities out of the navigation page. Even though it gets hidden for users, we're doing this to make life easier for admins. So you'll notice it's now over here on the website, and has added the mobile component as well. So we are migrating how you manage mobile registrations to the website. So that's moving away from the SCOM console, and you don't have to see SCOM views created in there. It makes life a lot easier and a lot manageable on the road for you, and this works for iPhone and the other components as well. So you can see me and Chris are signed in on the mobile, and we have abilities, and then you can centrally change notification settings for them as well. Now this is work in progress, so this is a sneak preview. No screenshots now, please. All of that will be available in there. While I'm in here, I did get a sneak peek from one of our developers, and he showed me some other stuff that we're adding in. So we are adding, which could help with your CIO dashboards as well, the ability on the widgets to actually add advanced criteria. So you'll notice there's this tag coming in here. Now how that works is it adds on to the query that you generate through all of these other systems, or essentially allows you to run an open query against a class or a target. That means in your widget you'll now have this, how to use the advanced field, which depending on the widget you selected, changes the parameters that you can look at. So this, I think, if I remember correctly, this is a health state widget. It actually has less abilities than potentially the SQL one or other components as well. But it gives you all of the properties that you can search against and parameters that you can use to really narrow this down. So you could do show me all live maps groups and user components from only this service. So email needs to be in there, or Exchange needs to be in there, and then it will label those out. You could also do it to show, here are some examples, critical computers, alerts, or computers that are not talking to me, unavailable components. So you can add another filtering onto the widget. And what are these ones? Components that are in error or warning. And you can get it to filter against the alerts as well. So this is a request that we had from a lot of people. So you can get a pre-filtered alerts listing widget as well using that system. Now there is an error message down here just to let you know that if you don't get the criteria correct, we do inform you what the error is. So here, for example, I have not put the operator and in here. So it's looking for objects with a health state name like BR, which you won't find anything. So it needs to be that and operator like you do within IQ these days. So you can have a real robust way of showing it. That flows in as well into the pie chart examples. And here are some examples where we've got and ors. That's actually one widget showing multiple data in here. And you can really tailor out what you show in values in here. You'll also notice that the coloring system matches. That's one of the things developers have put in. So you just have to write, I think this one's a SQL preview, and I can do it on PowerShell as well. You just have to write error warning success, and then we will match the error coding to SCOM. So error is physically red, success is green, unavailable is gray, which makes life a lot easier for those people who do not like the opaque colors. Blue, for example, is info on that one. So you don't have to worry about fidgeting around with the actual true health state. So if you get a data widget and flip that into a pie chart, based on this, you can have the ability that it will show health states correctly without you having to worry about it. So those are all sitting in there. There's more to come in 10.4 in there. So there's full support for SCOM 2019. If you guys had that question available, I know Chris is fielding a couple of those questions. It's there. If you guys already got access to 2019 and cannot wait for 10.4, drop us an email. We do have actually the parts that need to upgrade for the license checks available right now for people that are needing that. The Android access, which I mentioned about, mobile management I've talked about. There's the full integration with IQ feature, which is the full imports for live map services and auto updating. That's now in there, highly requested. We are updating service maps at the moment. I actually have a colleague who's done Active Directory 2016 and a few other ones on 2016's management packs, as we're noticing the management packs are starting to drop references to the older groups from the older management packs, so we are updating those. If you guys have any requests for other service maps, please let us know, and I'll get my colleague to look into it with full attention on that one. And of course, on the next release that's coming, if we can get it in time, we're adding more integrations as we keep getting asked what they are. So BMC Remedy's on there, Mitel's monitoring platform is on there as well, and a few other ones. So keep your eyes on that release. And I think that was me in a nutshell. So hopefully this was useful for everyone. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you've got any cool tips out of it, please let us know. And I'd love to see images of your dashboards come by if you are willing to share them. Feel free to reach out to me or Andrea. Thank you very much for your time. Andrea, thanks for putting this together. And it's
Not a
been
problem.
a
And
pleasure again.
everybody who's interested in a session, I've got notes, so I will reach out to you directly and we'll schedule something when it fits your schedule. Thanks for joining us today.
Till next time.